How's it going, bros? My name is... Nope, not doing that intro because, yeah, that just makes me feel a little sick. Anyway, welcome to another edition of The Game Changer, ladies and gentlemen. Here, of course, on Spreaker.com, SoundCloud, Mr. NTG1990 on YouTube, and, of course, iTunes. This is indeed Club Battle. I am Nate the effing Great. I'm being joined here by always the one, the only, the most extraordinary Mr. Max Beatty. How's it going, good sir?
Well, I was doing fine, but now we got this most extraordinary thing. Nothing like throwing the pressure on.
Right.
Now I got to live up to this, and I got to be amazing or something.
Well, I mean, I think it should be pretty easy. I mean, basically what we're doing today is we're doing a club battle pitting Doctor Strange versus the Hulk. And actually, when I was looking up at some of the images, I didn't realize that that was actually going to be a thing. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, the day that they actually do this, like pit Doctor Strange versus the Hulk, this is going to be a very interesting battle. But I think it's going to be in the far future, probably past Civil War at least.
Oh, yeah, probably.
But yeah, we're basically going to be pitting the Doctor Strange movie against not one, but both of the Hulk movies that came out in 2003 as well as in 2008, because I think that's the only way that they're probably going to be able to compete with Doctor Strange. Yeah, I'm going there, and I think a lot of people are going to see where I'm going to be, heading and win this club battle. But maybe, Max, you have a case that can maybe change our mind. But let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. Let's talk about Doctor Strange and the Hulk. And of course, guys, we're going to be doing the special 5-point system to make it fair. So, let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall start with the plot and see who did it better. So, I guess I'll start with the Doctor Strange plot. Of course, if people don't know the Doctor Strange story, basically, it talks about a man by the name of Doctor Strange, who's Stephen Strange, I should say, who basically is one of the best surgeons of his time, and unfortunately, due to an accident, he has limitations with his hands because they got basically wrecked. So he goes to basically I believe it was India, if I'm not mistaken, to meet this Ancient One. And the Ancient One teaches him the ways of the sorcery, and he also has to do battle with one of the Ancient One's pupils, who unfortunately is corrupted by the evil one known as Dormammu. And
I have come to bargain!
Yes, in what was probably one of the best scenes I'll probably ever see, the scene in which we see Dormammu and Doctor Strange battling it out, but Dormammu just basically is put on a repeat by Doctor Strange, in which Dormammu is just like, I can't stand this, I'm done, what do you want? And Doctor Strange makes the bargain, in which Dormammu sadly agrees to, but I think it's only going to be one of those things that he'll just come back, and it's going to be an extraordinary battle when we get to it. Yeah, all in all, this plot was pretty interesting to say the least. They had a lot of good action sequences. Storylines were definitely very good. You definitely could feel the pain that Doctor Strange was going through at the beginning of the movie, trying to find the right surgery to fix his hands, and then finding out about finding out about a way to help, not use his hands, but also go into the ways of sorcery. It's just a really good storyline.
Oh, God. The one thing I really liked about the storyline, at least of the movie version, was it felt very different from what we usually get in a superhero movie. Like, we've seen characters that start off as someone unlikable, an asshole. Like, we all love Iron Man now, but you think of how he was at the start of the first Iron Man movie. Dude was very arrogant, self-absorbed, he didn't care about how other people felt about him too much, and he clearly had no problems profiting off of war. But it was very direct. He sees the error of his ways, and comes and starts to come back around. And by the end of the movie, he appreciates Pepper. He opens himself up public by, declaring, "Hey, I'm Iron Man" and all that. But with this one, he was a selfish jerk. Not because I've got all this money and I can push everything out, but because he was extremely talented and had a very specific skill set that could impact other people's lives. And after his injury, he became more self-wrapped up. Like, he let his pain dominate who he became. And just as a side note, I like the fact that they did add in the detail of, his hands are pretty much like just destroyed. Like, the bones, the muscles, the tendons, they are just mutilated. Because in the original comics back in the 60s, it was just the bones being crushed, which, back in the 60s was something that they couldn't really deal with. But these days, with, reconstructive surgery, that's something that you can handle. But then you've got moments like the Dormammu thing where, how does every superhero movie end? Well, with a big fight between the superhero and, their primary villain of the movie, or maybe if it's been like a trilogy or something like that, the villain that's been built up over time. Instead, he outsmarts him. He realizes, Dormammu's got literally all the time in the universe, but if he can just make that time, at least annoying for him, it'll drive him to the point where it's like, okay, enough, I want this to stop. So it used a very familiar superhero structure in terms of character arcs and all that, but the way it went about the key plot points was just so different from what we're used to, especially in the Marvel movies, and I really feel that helped give it its own identity, in addition to just being a really, really well-told story. And damn, everything about this, just like the way they implement the lore, the size, I could go on and on about it.
Right, yeah, you definitely hit every single major point when it comes to Doctor Strange. It's different, it's kind of wizardry, so it does open up a different universe to what a lot of people are used to. And like you said, you get introduced to this almost like all-powerful being in Dormammu, which makes it just that much more interesting. So, with the Hulk, I remember watching the original Hulk back in 2003, and storyline...
Lord, that movie is 15 years old.
I know, it's crazy.
Oh my god, I'm going to be 29 this year. God, that movie came out when I was 14. I feel so I feel old. This is wrong.
So,
sorry, continue.
Right.
Existential crisis.
So basically the storyline between the Hulk in 2003 and the Incredible Hulk in 2008, they are sort of the same, if not having like maybe a small differences here and there. In the original one, definitely the way that Dr. Banner, gains his powers is a bit different because he's been experimented by his dad. The second one is basically an experiment where basically he's trying to find a better way to do things. The villain in the first one is definitely a lot different than the one in the Incredible Hulk, in which you actually see somebody actually turn into like this, Nega Hulk, I guess you could call it. It's kind of one of the stories where, I look at both of them and I think to myself, okay, so about the same, but interest level is kind of hit and miss depending on, where you try to hit.
No, I kind of get what you mean. The one thing I remember everyone who really loved the 2003 Hulk, especially its storyline, was always saying is, it's like Ang Lee. He kind of put his own stamp and his own style on doing Batman. I mean, not Batman, sorry, I'm actually leading into my example there, but on the Hulk. He did his own thing with a previously established character. Kind of similar to what guys like Tim Burton and later Christopher Nolan, and hell, you could even argue, regardless of quality, Joel Schumacher, all did with Batman. The difference, however, is even with Joel Schumacher, you could still look at Batman Forever and Batman and Robin and go, this is a Batman movie. Not necessarily a good Batman movie, but it's a Batman movie. It's like what the Silver Age, back in the 50s and whatnot, would have been like, very cheesy and silly, and over the top, or like the Adam West series, The Tim Burton ones were kind of like getting towards the slightly dark-edged, weird 80s stuff, and the Christopher Nolan stuff felt very grounded and realistic, which is very similar to a comic book that was called Batman Year One, which is about his first year out as Batman, and there's no supervillains, he's just dealing with people like the mob and whatnot. With those ones, you could still, like, yes, it was Christopher Nolan's Batman, it was Joel Schumacher's Batman, it was Tim Burton's Batman, but it was still Batman. Ang Lee's Hulk doesn't feel like the Hulk in terms of story, in terms of execution. He's clearly off doing his own thing, and I don't want to call that a bad thing, but when so much of the focus is on, like, these existential questions of what it means to be human and who's really the real Bruce Banner between him and the Hulk and all this stuff with his dad, and you add into that, you know, the clearly not there CGI effects, just God almighty. It's just, I don't know, man. It's not really what I would, and the story itself was just weird and convoluted. So, you know, Incredible Hulk comes out 2008. It's much simpler, much more straightforward. Since the Incredible Hulk is outside of Spider-Man, considering, you know, the TV shows and and everything else that's been done with the Hulk, probably Marvel's most recognizable to the mainstream crowd character. Again, outside of Spider-Man, they just start the Incredible Hulk off with, oh yeah, he's been the Hulk for a while, he's just kind of, you know, hiding out. He doesn't want to cause any trouble, he's trying to go, you know, however long he can without having a Hulk incident, which is cool. I mean, that's something that, you know, it feels like the old Bill Bixby TV show, it feels like the 90s cartoon, it feels like the comics. The problem is, it feels like the comics, but it feels like they tried to water down and distill the story to, like, the essence of a Hulk story, and then just kept boiling it down further until it's just this very simple, overly streamlined, gee, I wonder what's going to happen next kind of affair. Like, the big evil Hulk, known as Abomination in the comics, it's really cool to see him, and the actor who played him in his human form being named Emil Blonsky, that was really cool to see. I actually think that his character is probably the best part of the movie, him and General Ross, General Thunderbolt Ross. But, like, aside from that, it is such a predictable kind of slog. Like, sometimes I actually forget this movie exists. I mean, I know I said some pretty harsh stuff about the Ang Lee Hulk, but at least I remember it. The only thing I really remember from this movie is that is the one fight, really, between Hulk and Abomination. And aside from that, I mean, Edward Norton, okay. I mean, I don't really got much to say about it.
Yeah, I do agree. I looked at both of them, and I think I do see your point in saying, you know, with the original Hulk in 2003, it was a little more memorable. There's another reason why it was probably memorable, but we'll definitely get into that in a minute.
We will.
Yeah. But yeah, the second one, I thought, like, well, okay, this is okay, this is fine. It's cool to see, like you said, Abomination show up, but really, it's kind of like, well, doesn't really do too much. I think the only other memorable thing in the Incredible Hulk that was, you know, good, was the ending where, you know, Tony Stark has that, you know, cameo. He basically says, you know, I'm building a team together. And, you know, of course, every Marvel movie fan is just like, oh my god, they're actually doing this. They're actually doing an Avengers movie. And, of course, we're not getting, you know, Edward Norton for Bruce Banner. We get Mark Ruffalo. Totally okay with that, though. I think
he does an amazing job.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yep, they made the right move. They went with a different route. They went with a different person. Totally okay with that. So bottom line, between the two Hulks and Doctor Strange, starting with you, Max, which one had the better storyline?
Oh, Doctor Strange by a freaking country mile. It's weird, though, between the two Hulk movies, like, which would I put almost like as a second? I think I might actually go with the Ang Lee one, just because, yeah, a lot of it didn't make sense. At least it tried something. I was asking a question. At least it did do something different. The Incredible Hulk story isn't bad, it's just, I've seen that story like 100 times with characters other than the Hulk. So, but yeah, Doctor Strange, easily.
Yeah, I agree. Doctor Strange, bottom line. All right, so we go into the next category, which will be the supporting cast. So for the Incredible Hulk, let's start with those. Let's start with the Hulk movies. For those, I don't know. I mean, this is kind of weird because a lot of times, a good movie has a really good supporting cast, and with both of these Hulk movies, I don't know. I just really had a hard time pinpointing, certain characters in there that really kind of stood out the most, where it's just like, oh no, this is what makes a really good movie. I don't know. Maybe you have something that can, really change my mind about that, but I just kind of looked at both movies and I'm just like, I think more people were more focused on the Bruce Banner story and more focused on him than on other people in the supporting cast, really.
I got to agree with you for the most part. I'm bringing this up because it ties into my point. I'm normally the kind of person where I can deal with bad acting. As long as through direction and writing and, camera work and all the other parts of the movie, I can tell what the movie's trying to do with the character. Like, I personally stand by that, there have been plenty of movies that have, like, for example, I love the Matrix movies. Really nasty, bad acting from most of the actors, which is really weird since most of them would go on and had done amazing things before. But a lot of the acting's not the best. But you still see what they're going for with the characters and the story, and it winds up working regardless. And though, admittedly, for most people, probably only in the first Matrix movie. But whatever, not the point. So the reason I bring all that up is it is so weird for me to say this, but what kills the supporting cast of Ang Lee's Hulk is just how bland and boring the acting is. Like, a lot of the supporting cast isn't given a lot to do except for, like, General Ross and Bruce Banner's dad. But I'm even hesitant to call his dad a member of the supporting cast since he's essentially the villain of the movie. But we'll throw him in there just for sake of argument. And they're okay. I mean, Nick Nolte, he kind of just screams a lot. And that's about it in that movie. So between them not having a lot to work with and then just the flat performances, they're kind of nothing. Then you go to the Incredible Hulk movie, and it gets really selective. Like, the guy that played Emil Blonsky, the human version of Abomination, did a great job. I thought his character was very well executed, and everything about him was great. The thing that ruins him a little bit is that there's just not enough of him in the movie before he becomes Abomination. So it winds up kind of cutting the character flat. General Ross, he, for starters, feels and looks like he just walked out of the comics. The first time I saw this movie, my jaw hit the friggin' floor. I mean, oh my god, in terms of just the visuals and his demeanor, it's perfect, but his demeanor is all he is. There's, like, nothing else to his character other than this gruff, overly protective dad general. And that's it. You can summarize everything he does in the movie in one sentence. So, the acting is better, but they're still not given a whole hell of a lot to work with, so it falls flat for, almost a completely different reason. So, I actually got to agree with you. There's not a whole hell of a lot going on here with the supporting cast, especially in comparison to Doctor Strange. Oh my god.
Yeah, why don't you discuss that? What makes the Doctor Strange characters like, Wong and the Ancient One and Mordo a little more interesting than the both the Hulk movies?
I think what makes them interesting is two things. One, despite the fact that the movie has one, main storyline and it follows, Stephen Strange as he goes along his journey, all of the other characters have their own things to do. and they all have their own secrets. They all have their own goals and agendas. And even when they don't sync up with Doctor Strange's, or even necessarily with the plot, they push the plot along, and they push Doctor Strange in different directions. And then every once in a while, they just give these amazing little tweaks. Like, probably one of the best ones is actually involving the Ancient One. That scene where, spoiler alert, by the way, well, I suppose at this point, with the club battles, spoilers are kind of meaningless, but whatever. When she's dying, and, she's reliving that moment over and over where she's watching the lightning bolt slowly spread out and go down its arc. That is too friggin' cool. Like, it's this ancient, all-powerful sorcerer coming to terms with her death and knowing that this was coming, and it was a really poignant moment. I really, really appreciated that. Wong and his whole thing about, never laughing and kind of just being very serious. Yeah, that's played for comedy, but it's also very tightly wrapped up in who his character was. It's why when he finally busts out laughing, not only is it funny, it's like this big payoff moment for his character. Even Caecilius, the main villain, everyone's like, oh, Caecilius is just your typical Marvel movie villain. He's dead at the end of the movie. He felt like he had something going on. He felt like, no, the Ancient One has been hiding this from us. She's been lying. There's other ways to do it. I found another path. It's just, everyone had their own thing to do and had a good amount of material to work with, and then they just knocked it out of the park with, the acting and the performances. It's everything you would want from a supporting cast. And, I mean, damn, and they just did it so well, and there's just no comparing it to the two Hulk movies. It's not even fair.
Well, I mean, I think somebody can make the case that some of the characters on Doctor Strange, yes, they are a bit bland, as far as like maybe emotion-wise or character-wise, but at least, to your point, they do serve a purpose. I mean, Wong is kind of the assistant that helps Stephen Strange, along his path. The Chosen One, she really doesn't show as much emotion as much as more just help teach Doctor Strange the way of, of her sorcery. And with Mordo, he's kind of in the realm of, this is kind of the way things are, this is the kind of the way things are supposed to be. At the end, he knows that these things are changing, so that's why he's just saying, I'm done with this. I'm not going to, be a part of this any longer. So for that was actually a really powerful deal. I think some of it had to do with, the Chosen One being, well, the Ancient One, I should say, being gone, but also just everything that was going on and all the ancient ways that he was, trying to upheld are slowly, dying out. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's all about change. And unfortunately, some people just don't like change as much as others do.
Yeah, pretty much. But it like I said, I thought it worked out really well.
It really did. So I guess we're in agreement that supporting cast goes to Doctor Strange.
Starting to feel this is going to get one-sided.
I thought that maybe, doing this, we could probably bring up some kind of point where Hulk might have an advantage, but yeah, I'm starting to really think that this might be one-sided. But, it's still great to at least talk about these kind of movies, because then you at least remember, it's like, hey, this is, they still had some good stuff, but what could have helped them more was, better deals. And let's go into one of the more interesting ordeals. Let's talk about the love interest in the movies. So with Doctor Strange, we of course have oh man, God, I'm trying to remember not the actress's name, but the Christine Palmer. That's right. She basically plays this role of just being, somebody who knows Stephen Strange, who's worked with him, who has actually had relations with Stephen Strange. She definitely shows quite a bit of emotion, and honestly, honest to God, I have been in love with Rachel McAdams for God knows how long. So as soon as I saw that she was in this movie, I'm like, oh, thank God, this is going to be very interesting. And I really wasn't disappointed. She definitely brought out the emotion whenever it felt like, there needed to be emotion. There's probably some people that are just like, she's okay. For those people, I could say, you can shut up because she was awesome. I think she was probably one of my favorite, supporting cast characters as well as love interests in a lot of these Marvel movies. I mean, of course, you can name Gwyneth Paltrow as Peppers. You can name so many other people, but for me, Rachel McAdams as Christine Palmer definitely is high up there because of the fact that she basically, tries to help Stephen Strange stay on the right path. She's basically kind of like that balance, I guess you could say, of trying to, keep Stephen Strange, on the right path, but also keep it so that he's at least, thinking practical, I guess you could say.
Keeps him grounded.
Right.
But I like that they don't get together at the end of the movie. It's not will they, won't they at the end of the movie. It's just they have their own lives and they might care about each other in some capacity, but those two lives are functionally incompatible. And it's kind of cool to see that. I mean, you can argue that they do that in the Hulk movies, but I mean, they do, but they don't. Kind of like it's more of a struggling to get together rather than just realizing that there are some irreconcilable incompatibilities. And I kind of really didn't expect that. I kind of figured, okay, they're gonna bend and twist it so that she can totally be with him, and maybe she goes back to the Sanctum Sanctorum with him, and she's his assistant alongside Wong or something along those lines. But they don't do that. They don't even approach that idea, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Then we, of course, go into the two Hulk movies, and oh, God, Jennifer Connelly as Betty. Jeez Louise. You talk about, the blind leading, the blind in... let me at least say this. For Jennifer Connelly, she was definitely one of those people that looked like she had no emotion whatsoever in this entire movie. It just basically looked like she could just be a robot. And I thought to myself, well, I mean, she's beautiful, but it seems like that's the only thing that's good for her. Okay, so she was basically what Megan Fox was to the Transformers movies back in the day. Oh, joy, great, just great. With Liv Tyler's, with Liv Tyler's Betty, I think that I felt like she did a better representation of it. I feel like her performance definitely felt like, she had a little more emotion. She definitely did show that she cared more about, Bruce Banner. I think the scene that really, stands out the most is that scene where Bruce is slowly turning into the Hulk, and, she's basically on Bruce just saying, it's me, just calm down, just breathe, and that's what basically, gets him to turn back into Bruce Banner. So with that, I think that Liv Tyler did a better job of representing Betty. Was it enough to save the film? Sadly, no. But at the same time, I think it was definitely a step above Jennifer Connelly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you there. I kind of feel like it's...
It's unfair.
I don't know. It's a toss-up, really. I mean, it's less of a who's best or who's better and more of a who's least worst kind of a deal. I mean, God, yeah, they're. I agree with you. There's definitely a clear choice for who's better, but at the same time, I kind of also don't really care.
I don't know how really we can go further than that. So I guess we're gonna just go voting. Christine. That's my choice. Who you got?
Same.
Well, Christine just ran away with that one. So thank you again, Rachel McAdams, for your wonderful performances. So now we move on to another crucial deal that goes into movies, and that, of course, being the villain. So we basically did talk about, Caecilius and Dormammu for Doctor Strange, about how both their stories definitely tie in very well. Now, yeah, we talked heavily about that. So let's try to talk a little bit about, the Hulk and how, of course, the Incredible Hulk had Abomination, which was absolutely an amazing character that, turned out to be one of the most badass villains that we'll probably ever see. In the first Hulk movie, was there really even a villain? Because I feel like it was just one of those movies where it was like nobody really stood out as like, the villain to watch for. At least in the second one, they at least had one person that was like, okay, this is the person you probably want to watch out for. Oh, he's going to turn into Abomination. Okay, then. That's great. But yeah, the first Hulk movie, I feel like nobody was really, pinpointed as the villain. That's the problem.
I think you can make an argument for his dad, since he was manipulating everything behind the scenes. He's the reason, essentially, that Bruce became the Hulk, and he turns into that weird, storm lightning thing at the end. I don't even know. I mean, I would personally peg him as the villain, but at the same time, it's just, he's barely in the fucking movie. I mean, they talk about him a fair amount, but it's less about him as a villain and more, Bruce had a shitty dad kind of a deal. In the Incredible Hulk, definitely much better villains. I think you could throw General Ross in there as at least an antagonist. So you kind of have the dual factor with him and Abomination, and then, Abomination gets out of control, and, Hulk basically has to stop him. I did really appreciate, though, that they kept one thing from common, and that was that Abomination is kind of like the polar opposite of the Hulk, at least in terms of their human form. Like, Bruce is always trying to resist the Hulk. He wants to be in control. He doesn't want to he doesn't want to fly into a rage. He doesn't want to lose his cool. He's a scientist. Everything's very precise with him, very controlled, very meticulous. Emil Blonsky, in contrast, is this kind of wild man soldier. He's out for himself. He revels in these new powers. When he transforms into the Abomination, it's basically the greatest day of his friggin' life. So I really did love that they kept that in there, and I like that they kept the shit, he's out of control now. That I really thought was cool. And I think it's one of the few points of the movie that really stood out and really was, at least in some way, memorable. And that comes right down to the villains.
Yeah, definitely do full-heartedly agree with that. All right, so for our pick for villains, who have you got?
Honestly, it's a little tough because, like I said, I really appreciate what they did with the Abomination and General Ross, but at the same time, as much as I like them, there wasn't really much in terms of the characters to go on. But then over on Doctor Strange, yeah, Dormammu and that one scene with him is awesome, but that's kind of all Dormammu does, is exist, be the corrupting influence for Caecilius, and then, Dormammu I've come to bargain. Caecilius is a good villain, but he doesn't feel like he's necessarily connected too heavily to Doctor Strange himself. So maybe it sounds weird, but I kind of almost... I'm going with the Incredible Hulk, actually.
I think I'm going to actually agree with you on that, because, as you said, yeah, it's really cool seeing these, two villains, Dormammu and Caecilius, but at the same time, they're not as heavily featured as they really should be. I think that Doctor Strange more focused on, Stephen Strange getting his powers and slowly becoming the person that he is. But, at least with Incredible Hulk, you get a little bit more of the action sequences. Yeah, there's barely, some characters being built up there. But at least we get some kind of, major fight scene out of the main villain, quote-unquote, and the hero. So, I agree with you. I think we'll go with the Hulk on this one. All right, so, of course, we go into the final category. Not that it really matters, but might as well talk about it anyway. Which was the better hero, Doctor Strange or the Hulk himself? So obviously we did pinpoint a lot of things that went on with Doctor Strange, basically how he was basically had the first mindset, like we said, of Tony Stark, where, he's a bit selfish, he's a bit cocky, he just makes it seem like it's all about him. But he gets humbled along the way, and that changes his personality to where he actually shows that he cares, he actually shows that he is human. He actually seems like he's, becoming somebody different, and it does feel like you're a part of that journey where you see him become the person that he is now, and having, still having a bit of an influence. I mean, some people might, of course, say like, whatever, but he still played a bit of an influence in Thor Ragnarok, which was awesome that they tied in that final scene with Thor, and they put that scene into Thor Ragnarok. It's like, okay, so they basically tied in a piece of Doctor Strange exactly, basically word for word, scene for scene, into Thor Ragnarok. It's awesome because then they made that movie so familiar, where it's like, oh, this is the ending of Doctor Strange. So now we get more in depth with that, more in depth with how Doctor Strange actually helps Thor, how he helps Loki, they help them find their father, everything like that. So again, it all comes from Doctor Strange's first movie, where we see him become this. Is he a powerful sorcerer? No, he's probably still learning, but he's at least powerful enough to know what he's doing.
Oh, definitely. Oh man, there's a lot with Doctor Strange himself in the movie. Like I said, his arc through the movie is fantastic. It doesn't feel very conventional, at least by superhero means. There's a lot of weighty stuff behind his character in terms of his mentality, how he approaches people, his outlook on life, how he internalizes his pain, how he goes about to rectify it, and finally where he ends up at the end of the film. Benedict Cumberbatch did a fantastic job with the material given, and like I said, the material given was already really fucking good, so I mean, there have been a lot of ideal casting and filmmaker choices within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Jon Favreau and Robert Downey Jr. coming together to direct and star in Iron Man. That's the go-to one because it's absolutely perfect. Bringing together all these ideal casting choices in the Avengers and having that be helmed by Joss Whedon, perfect. And this feels like another one of those perfect storm moments with Doctor Strange. But, looking at the Hulk films, I'm just going to say right now that I'm not even going to bother with Ang Lee's Hulk because, oh my god, David Banner just... Oh, that version. Nope, we're not going there. The Incredible Hulk, however, Edward Norton's a fantastic actor. There's a reason why a lot of people were actually kind of disappointed when he didn't reprise the role in the 2012's Avengers. And on top of that, they do give him some really great dialogue to work with. He slides into the role really well. He fits and suits it well. It is a little weird at times seeing Edward Norton in a comic book movie, but at the same time, he just fits in the role really, really well. He's given very good direction. A lot of the written material and dialogue he's given works really, really well. He knows how to... They really sell and know how to showcase that kind of restrained, repressed rage and how that can kind of build into self-loathing. So, I mean, they did a really great job with the Hulk in that movie. I would almost argue that if you're just, ignoring everything around the Hulk, you could almost argue that maybe that version of the Hulk is a little bit better than what we got in the Avengers or in any of the subsequent films. I mean, would I argue that? Not necessarily, but it's an argument that I could at least understand and see where someone's coming from because it really did click very well in my opinion.
Yeah. I full-heartedly agree, and there's nothing more that I can really add on to that. So I guess the final question is, who is better, Doctor Strange or the Hulk? I'm gonna give it to Stephen Strange just because with the two Hulk movies, yes, I see your point with Edward Norton, but it just wasn't enough. Like I said, the Doctor Strange character was played very well by Benedict Cumberbatch. It, like I said before, it definitely seemed like he was taking us on that journey of him becoming the sorcerer that he was. So, in all honesty, I think for the realism points, not to say that Bruce Banner doesn't have realism points, but I just think that I relate a little bit more to Stephen Strange than I do the Hulk. So, Doctor Strange, you get my vote.
Oh, no, I mean, despite all the praise that I just heaped on the Hulk, and don't get me wrong, I still stand by everything I said there, I gotta go with Doctor Strange as well. For as well executed as the Hulk was in The Incredible Hulk, Doctor Strange was just that much better. The performance, you could argue, was better. The direction was a bit better. The action, he had a more defined, solid arc that connected to more parts of his own film. It was just... Plus, there's all just the differences from the norm. It's just... as much as I did personally enjoy Edward Norton as the Hulk, and I enjoyed how that all worked out in the film, Doctor Strange was pretty much a slam dunk.
So it comes as no surprise, ladies and gentlemen, that your winner of the club battle is Doctor Strange. So, before we head out...
That's not shocking.
It's actually... I'll put it to you like this. It's a... It was an 8-2, so at least the Hulk had, some kind of a chance, but it was a very minuscule chance.
Yeah.
All right, so before we go, I actually mentioned to you that I had an idea for a future Hulk movie that might actually work, but maybe it's a little far-fetched, and I kind of want to know your thoughts on it. So let's just lay it out. So one of the things that I definitely did think was good, like I said, about Doctor Strange, is that you have that final scene where it definitely played into Thor Ragnarok. What if they actually did a Hulk movie where, during, maybe it's the Infinity War, or maybe it's during a different kind of time, where we actually get these flashbacks of the Hulk, because obviously right now it's one of those things that up in question. Is Bruce Banner going to be coming back? Is he, fully consumed as the Hulk that they definitely mentioned in Thor Ragnarok, which is a really interesting point, and it's one of those things that we're going to be looking at thinking, is Bruce Banner going to be coming back, or are we just getting the Hulk from now on? Maybe, the Hulk has these memories of, him starting out. Basically, I don't know if I would call it a reboot, but just have some of these things that kind of tie into some of the other movies. Maybe he could fill in the gaps where so many people can have these questions answered of, where did the Hulk come from, what it was his backstory. I also thought that, that scene that I mentioned during The Incredible Hulk where, Betty is basically trying to calm down Bruce, maybe have that scene there. You could probably use a different actress, or maybe you could use, Liv Tyler. I think that would actually be kind of interesting to bring her back, and maybe tie her into how she and Black Widow relate in a way of they're kind of the only two that really can help calm down the Hulk, where basically brings out the happiness and the joy that Bruce Banner wants to feel as a human being. Where again, it's one of those things where it's with Betty, she helped calm him down, and of course as soon as Hulk meets up with Black Widow, it's kind of one of those things where it's she's calming me down. I've never felt this since back at this time. Just really kind of just tying things together where you kind of get a little more in depth with Bruce Banner. You're kind of giving a little more of a bit of a backstory. I know it seems a bit far-fetched, and I know it seems like one of those things that I don't think Marvel would probably quote-unquote waste a movie on. But I think it would be one of those things that'd be an interesting thing to take a risk for. Just going back and just tying in certain things, basically his first meeting with a couple other characters, maybe develop the relationship between, Bruce Banner and Thor, or maybe Bruce Banner and Captain America. Just really building up slowly on that, and just giving him a little more of a character to build off of, to where people are just kind of like, okay, maybe we're giving Hulk way too much grief, because there's a lot more to Hulk's story than a lot of people give credit to. And I think having this backstory to it would probably make for a very interesting movie. Yes, you could tie in action sequences, from the Infinity War, and tie in some early battles that he had as the Hulk. Just trying to just tie everything together, and maybe even give some of the other characters a little more depth. I mean, do some of them need it? Well, no, but I think it'd be really interesting to see, how they play into the Hulk's life, really.
Honestly, that sounds pretty good. It'd be a far more character-driven and very much less action-oriented film. But like you said, I think it'd be definitely worth the risk. I think that would work out extremely well.
Yeah, it was just one of those things that I thought in my head, and I'm thinking, if they did this and they just tied in these things together, then maybe it'll kind of just be one of those things that people can look at and think, well, this actually works well because this ties into, them combining, so they can combine this with Age of Ultron as well as the first Avengers movie, and then this will definitely, maybe they can even bring up the scene to where, Hulk is escaping during Age of Ultron, and he has that, they showed that camera footage of him, flying into space and then ending up on the, planet where he meets up with, the Collector, of course, Jeff Goldblum. Oh my God, we want more of him, please and thank you. Just, tying in with that and giving, giving Jeff Goldblum a little bit of a paycheck. He's worth it. Just bring that character back. He's worth it. I think that would just be awesome.
Well, like I said, I'd be more than willing to see that. That actually sounds really cool.
Well, you're welcome. All right, so with that, we are going to conclude this battle here, guys. It's been a pretty good year so far, and in all honesty, it's really awesome to talk about these movies. We're going to continue on going into next week. As far as who's going to be pitted into the club battle, we'll definitely make that announcement before the week is over. It's going to be very interesting because usually we do these every Sunday, but with next weekend, it's going to be a little bit different. We'll probably have to do this on either like a Thursday or a Friday due to the fact of what is going on this weekend. I mean, it's Royal Rumble weekend, so it's like, oh, that's going to take up more of our time. So we'll definitely let you know, guys, when the next club battle is, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode when we had Doctor Strange and the Hulk go at it. Again, I think it's going to be really interesting to see when these guys clash, but it's going to probably happen long after Infinity War, and for good reason. So you can always follow Mr. Max Beatty on his Twitter at Agent Cooper 1989, as well as follow me on Twitter at RealFNGame, and give us a like on the Facebook fan page, which is /Changing Up the Game. So for Max Beatty, I'm Nate the Effing Great. This has been The Game Changer. We will talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Peace.